Am I unmuted? Am I good? Am I good? All right. So I'm supposed to be speaking to you some about Bear Valley, and then the majority of the time I'll be talking about what we're doing in South Dakota. You're good. It's just my outline is on the PowerPoint. So
I have complete control.
you do. So Bear Valley is a 2-year program. It's a 2-year. We've moved away from calling it a preaching school, and it's now called a Bible Institute. What we're trying to do is move away from, there it is.
There you go.
So we're trying to move away from it just being a school of preaching, because it's not just preachers that go there, but it's youth ministers, missionaries, women go there. So anybody can be a student at Bear Valley Bible Institute, not just those who want to be pulpit ministers. Example is myself going into domestic mission work. So just left and right on the, okay. So you see that there's one campus in the United States located in Denver, Colorado. And that one campus in Denver has about 60 students, including full-time as well as part-time. So there's also, what a lot of people don't know, is there's not just one school in Denver, but there are many, many schools across the world, approximately 40 Bear Valley schools worldwide, close to 1,000 students. They always say the sun never sets on Bear Valley. There's always, there's just many schools around the world. The idea with that is to not bring foreign students in and then send them back out, bring them into Denver and teach them and send them back out, but to bring teachers there to their own countries, teach them, and they can go on with what they're doing there. It's a 2-year program, but a 4-year bachelor's degree. So you've got 4 years of material crammed into 2 years' time, so it's all double the workload. It's not as bad as you think. Classes cover each book of the Bible as well as other practical ministry classes. So we have a class over every book of the Bible. Some of them are lumped together, like the minor prophets, or like the post-exilic prophets, or some of the books are lumped in together. But we go through each book of the Bible almost verse by verse. So in 2 years, we're pretty much hitting each verse of the Bible and discussing each verse of the Bible. The other practical ministry classes, we have things like preacher and his work. So we're not discussing a text or a book of the Bible, but we're talking about, as a preacher, how to make visits, how to preach funerals, how to do weddings, and how to counsel, different things like that. We also have things like ministry tech. Ministry tech is how to put a slideshow together. We have this program called Logos, and Logos is just a Bible software. It's very, very intricate. There's a lot going on with Logos and Ministry Tech. They teach us how to use that. There's also Greek. Number 4, Bear Valley focuses on exegetical and hermeneutical principles. So exegesis is the idea of pulling things out of the text. Exo bringing out of, and then exegesis, pulling things out of the text. I'll show you what exegesis looks like. This is exegesis, and I know it's hard to see, but what exegesis is, and this is not actually mine, this is someone else's, but you see the phrase, like, proclaim to you, I don't even know if you can read it, but circled in blue, and that connects to all the other times proclaim to you is stated. You also have things underlined and highlighted. You have keywords. And so there's a lot going on with exegesis. But the idea of exegesis is not to see verses isolated and just isolated verses. And we're not just memorizing John 3:16, but we can see John 3:16 in its whole. Thank you. Yeah, that'll help. But we're not just seeing John 3:16 in its isolated verse, but we're seeing how it connects through the whole context. How else does John use the word world in John 3:16? And how else does John use the word God, and where else? So exegesis is this idea of being able to see things in their context and how key words connect in the book. And this is really what Bear Valley is built upon, this idea of exegesis. And we're almost doing this with most books of the Bibles. We're doing this. So I also said it's built on hermeneutical principles. Hermeneutics is the study of how to interpret Scripture. And so we have, in hermeneutics, you've got 3 basic principles of how to interpret Scripture. How do we know what we need to do based on the Bible? And that is commands, inferences, and then examples. And so if we have commands in the Bible, we should do it. We can make inferences in the Bible, and then examples in the Bible that we need to do. So, for example, baptism, we're commanded to be baptized. We also have the examples in Scripture of being baptized, like the eunuch in Acts chapter 8, and then we can make the inferences or the necessary inferences. For example, the eunuch was taken down into the water. Philip and the eunuch both went down into the water. So it doesn't say that he was immersed into the water, but we can infer that because they both went into the water, he didn't just sprinkle him, but he was immersed. So that's what, basically, that's what we're building everything off of at Bear Valley, is those exegetical and hermeneutical principles. Gotcha. So this is the graduating class. Like Chris said, I started Bear Valley in January of 2018. It's a 2-year program, so I'll finish this December. And so since Bear Valley is quite a bit of a smaller school, they only have one graduation ceremony. So I walked at graduation with the students in May, but I won't officially graduate until December. So there I am on the bottom right. So that was our graduating class. For more information about Bear Valley, I have on there. The website is wetrainpreachers.com. Facebook, Bear Valley Bible Institute. Instagram, Bear Valley Bible Institute. The way Bear Valley works, I guess maybe you already know this because you're supporting me, but because of how intense the studies are at Bear Valley, we can't have full-time jobs. We don't work part-time. So we're on full support. We're just relying on the brotherhood to support us. And so every month we're getting the funds to live. We just have an apartment. There's no dorms or anything there. We just find our own apartments, and we just pay the rent based on what we are given. Everything is through the funding of the brotherhood. So whenever I am finished with Bear Valley and you are interested and you think this work is awesome and you think this is Bear Valley is a good school, then keep supporting students. Continue to find students or contact the school and say, any way we can help, we want to help. You are really helping people and students and families more than you realize whenever you support. There always comes a time, Bear Valley, in your junior or senior semester when you start looking for jobs. And me and this guy right here, his name is Matt Jones, and this is Heather Jones. They're married. I'll tell you more about them in a minute. But me and Matt are both in the same class. Me and Matt have become pretty good friends in the time that we're at Bear Valley. And neither of us had found a job yet, and it was, I guess, late in our junior semester, which is normal. We hadn't found a job yet. We were like, let's just plant a church, man. Like, let's just go do a church plant. And we were really kidding around. We weren't being serious at all. And then one of our instructors, his name is Corey Sawyers, he overheard us having that conversation, and he said, yeah, I know a place. He said, let's get going. And so me and Matt were kidding, and we got thrown into this situation where Corey was not kidding. And so that is what brings us to Mission Huron. Now, Huron is a town in South Dakota right in here. And I'll tell you more about that, but me and Matt and Katie and Heather, Matt's wife, they have a little daughter named Georgia. Georgia's fixing to turn 3, right? And we're all in January going to go up to South Dakota. And again, I'm going to tell you more about this congregation in a minute and the situation there in Huron. But before that, I want to tell you about Matt and Heather and ourselves. So both Katie and I, we grew up in the church. And this is Katie and me. This is Matt and Heather. This is all of us together at Mount Rushmore in South Dakota. But Katie and I both grew up in the church. Her dad is an elder. My dad's a deacon. We were both just members of the church since the time we were little. And I have to be careful when I say it, but I never really had to step out in faith, if that makes sense, because I was raised in the church, I wasn't converted. I was just raised. Neither was Katie. So coming to Bear Valley wasn't necessarily a big step. It wasn't a step out in faith because I knew tons of people at Bear Valley. The funds were there. I wasn't going out to Bear Valley with no funds or anything. I was just always given everything I needed, and I'm so grateful for that, and so was Katie. But my faith has never been tested, maybe is the best way to say it. And so that's one reason we want to go to South Dakota, is because we want that. I want that test of my own faith. I want to step into a situation where it's going to be difficult. It's going to be harder for me. And I can say the same with Katie. Now, Matt and Heather, they're a very different story. Matt and Heather are both converts. Matt is fixing to be 30. Heather is 29, so they're a little bit older than us. Katie and I are both 20. And they were both converted very recently, within 5 years. And so they have a much different story than Katie and I. And I think that's what makes us both a good team, is that we see different sides of it. So they're going to be able to help people who don't know God and who aren't members of the church in South Dakota, and they're going to be able to relate to them a lot different than we are. Matt grew up in Alabama, and Heather grew up in Florida, and Matt moved to Oklahoma, Winoka, Oklahoma. I don't know if you know where that is. It's in the northwest corner, and he was just worked on a farm up there. And I didn't know Matt or Heather until we got to Bear Valley, even though we were both from Oklahoma. When we got to Bear Valley, Matt became really close, and then we jumped into, we got thrown into the situation here in South Dakota. So after we got told about the work that was necessary in South Dakota, and again, Corey Sawyers, just an instructor at Bear Valley, had heard about what was going on, or heard about me and Matt talking about this, and he was a preacher in Tennessee a while back, and there was another guy up in South Dakota who was trying to do domestic mission work, and Corey's congregation in Tennessee knew about this work in Tennessee, and they were supporting it. They were helping out. And so that's how Corey was affiliated with this work in South Dakota. So after he told us we need to go up there and it's a good place, me and Matt and our families went up there and visited. You'll see that picture on the left. We went up to Huron and visited, and we fell in love with it, and so that's what we decided to do. So I'll tell you about Huron. Huron is eastern South Dakota. I showed you, so if this black square was the state, Huron is somewhere in here. There's approximately 13,000 people in population, so it's not a huge town, but it's definitely not a small town. There is a very good-sized community there, and there's one Church of Christ, and there's 4 members there. So this is really obviously that's what's bringing us up there, is there's only one Church of Christ in a town of 13,000 people, and it's dwindled to 4 members. So what I understand is in the 50s, the early 50s, the church in Huron was established, or that church was planted, and it was really going well. It was thriving, and then over time, don't know exactly when, but it was back in the mid to late 1900s, I guess. Their preacher there got into trouble, sexual stuff. I don't know what happened, and so then the church started declining. Then one guy, a couple years ago, 10 or 15 years ago, went up there and tried to help out again. Things didn't go well. So me and Matt and Katie and Heather, we are trying to go up there with a much different plan. We're going with a team this time, not necessarily just a one-person mission team, but we're going up there as a team, a 4-person team, and that is going to change the way things are. And so another thing that I believe is important is there is a approximately 28% poverty rate. Now, the reason I think this is important and the reason I included this is the poverty rate and 28% poverty rate, which is rather high, is really going to change the way that we do ministry. That means I was doing the math yesterday, and I believe that's 28% of 13,000 people is somewhere around 3,600 people. So you've got 3,600 people in this town who really need help. 3,600 people who may be single parents, who have a bunch of kids, who can't put food on the table, and are looking for anything to give them hope, are looking for anything to give them some sort of light at the end of the tunnel. They need to provide for their kids, and so 3,600 people who are struggling and 3,600 people who haven't heard the gospel. So I believe 28% poverty rate is very important. It's going to be at the front of our minds whenever we are evangelizing in this town. So I want to tell you about this church, Wisconsin Avenue Church of Christ. This is just pictures of the building. It's a very nice building. Again, it was established in the 50s. It's a paid-off building. They are, it's a little nice congregation right on the main street in the town. You can see, I don't know if you can see that, but that's a TV right there. What they've been doing for the past 10 years almost is, since they've just had 4 members, there's no one preaching or anything. There's a church in Texas, Burleson Church of Christ, I think it is. They're a monster congregation. They send their videos or DVDs of their services to Huron, and they just watch them on this little TV screen, and they listen to the lesson, they sing the songs, they take the Lord's Supper with them, they just do everything with them. And there's a table. You definitely can't see the table, but there's a table right here at the front of the room, and they all just sit around this table, and that's how they do their worship, and they've done it for 10 years, and it's pretty. I have to commend them because they're very strong for doing that. 4 members staying there. I don't know if I could do it, going for 10 years and just seeing the same 4 people, and that would be difficult to do. I commend them for doing that. And again, I told you the story with the congregation. To my knowledge, that's the story with the congregation. So our plan is to be in Huron for 5 years. So from January of this upcoming year, 5 years. For those 5 years, our plan is to do Acts 2. And that is our plan for bringing people in. So I'll explain that to you. In Acts chapter 2, if you want to turn there. In Acts 2, 42 through 47, we see kind of the first picture of what the early church, the first church, did. This is, we're zeroing in and kind of looking into this church. In Acts 2, 42 through 47, they devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching, the fellowship, the breaking of bread, and prayers, and awe came upon every soul. Many wonders and signs were being done through the apostles, and all who believed were together and had all things in common. And they were selling their possessions and belongings and distributing the proceeds to all, as any had need. And day by day, attending the temple and breaking bread in their homes, they received the food with glad and generous hearts, praising God and having favor with all people. And this is what's important. The Lord added to their number day by day those who were being saved. So we see the early church, they had a focus on in-reach. They had a focus on taking care of each other. They had a focus on the teaching of the apostles. Today that's the Bible. They had a focus on having meals with one another, taking the Lord's Supper and worship. And as they just focused on doing the things that the church needed to do, taking care of each other, God added to their number. A lot of times, my own self, I have always put a huge emphasis on the church needs to do more outreach. The church needs to come up with good programs and cool programs and attractive programs and do all these things to try and bring other people in. And that's true, and that's not wrong, but the picture we see in the early church is they were not adding to their number day by day because they had all these programs and all these attractive things going on. But when they were taking care of each other, they were providing for each other, they were selling their possessions and giving to each other, they were having meals with each other every day, they were devoting themselves to prayer, God added to their number. Don't know how that happens, but it does. So that's what our first thought is whenever we go to Huron, is not come up with all these cool, attractive programs, and those things will happen. I'll explain those to you in a minute. But our first thought is, let's take care of each other. Let's provide for each other. Let's eat in each other's houses every day, every night. Let's have a meal together. When other people see us taking care of each other, when other people see us in the love that we have for each other, God is going to add to the number. Don't know how. When people see it, they're going to be attracted to it. So that is our first, our first thought, and our first focus is just to focus on displaying love. Because when you boil it down, that's what the early church is doing. They're displaying love to each other. They're displaying love to God. They're displaying love to what God has to say to them. And when they focus on displaying love, God is adding to the number. So that is our first plan whenever we go up there. And it's just that's the trust in God that I was talking about. Don't know how it happens. Don't know how God is adding to the number. But we're going to go up there. We're going to do what we need to do. We're going to take care of each other. And we're trusting that God is going to add to the number. With that being said, we are going to do some outreach, and we are going to have programs and different things we're going to do that are planning on drawing people in. Some of those things, you see, this right here is the fair booth. The fair, the South Dakota State Fair, is in Huron, South Dakota. And this is a huge fair. It's not the Oklahoma Fair, but it's a big fair. And the Churches of Christ have a booth set up in probably the best location there is for a vendor to be. They have two booths, and this is the space of two booths is what I mean. And it's right on the corner of kind of the main building there. So it's awesome. It's prime real estate. And they've had it for years. All the churches in the state contribute to this booth, and then the booth from Huron, or the church from Huron kind of runs it. So this is one thing that is really awesome that is already happening. The problem with it is for the past 10 years, they've been running this booth, and they have thousands of contacts. When me and Matt and Katie and Heather went to go visit the church, there was a bucket of thousands of pieces of paper rolled up from years past from the fair of people's emails and phone numbers. But because they don't know what to do, because they don't have a lot of Bible knowledge, because they don't have any, they're not comfortable with reaching out to those people, they just sit there. So there's thousands of people, they have their phone numbers, but they're just not doing anything with them because they don't know how. So this is an amazing ministry that we're hoping to really get going and not just get their contacts, but reach out to them when we have their contacts. Another thing is, you see this right here. Me and Matt are planning on doing a podcast. This is kind of a rough draft of a logo we made. But we're doing a podcast, or we're planning on doing a podcast, and it's really just whenever we're meeting people, we want to have this conversation-type podcast with me and Matt. And so whenever we meet a non-Christian, we can say, just listen to if you're not comfortable with talking to us, go sit in the comfort of your own home, put your earbuds in, and just listen and realize me and Matt are regular dudes. There's nothing special. We're not intimidating. Just listen. And so this kind of gives them a way to learn about us before we try and hit them with the Bible. And they're learning us in their own environment. Another thing we want to do with the podcast is try and not just inform non-Christians, but help the brotherhood and other preachers realize the need of domestic mission work. and talk about what's going on in South Dakota, talk about the kind of things that are happening and the fruit that's being produced, and maybe open other people's eyes to the need for domestic missions. Here is, this is Katie right here, and these ladies, we just got back from a campaign in Bolivar, Missouri. That's another thing we do with Bear Valley, is every year? Every year we go, so you end up doing 2 campaigns by the time that you're at Bear Valley. You go to another congregation and you do whatever they want you to do, whether it's service projects or this past week we preached a lectureship. So you go to this congregation, usually a smaller congregation, and this past week what we did a lectureship, just a group of students, and we preached a lectureship. These are all the wives and the daughters of the men that went to this lectureship from Bear Valley. And a lady from the congregation there in Bolivar, Missouri, she did what is called chalk couture. And she makes these little signs. And you've seen these signs at Bear Valley, at Hobby Lobby, or these little wooden signs with the real cute teachers have them in their classrooms, and you've seen them all over the place. They're really popular. But this lady has a kit, and she has people into her houses, and this past week she had all of our wives into her house, and they made these signs. And so this is Heather, the other lady we're going with, and this is Katie, and they were like, this is, I guess, one of the first things they thought is we need to do this in Huron, because so many people, so many ladies and young women would love to do this. And so they talked about starting getting this kit to do this chalk couture and have other people into the building or have other people into our houses and make these signs just to make contact with other people. Help other people see we're just regular people. We're interested in the same stuff y'all are. And building that relationship before you try and teach them. So the kind of the plan here is to just building relationships and helping other people see we're regular people, we love you, we care about you, and then we are starting to have the spiritual conversations, starting to do these different things. So these are just some of the ideas that are in our heads to do this. Another thing is, so continuing with kind of the plan, what's in our minds as far as what we're going to do. We've got benevolence, personal Bible studies, and then group Bible studies. So like I mentioned, there is 28% poverty rate in Huron, relatively high. Matt preaches out at a congregation when he's at Bear Valley. Something we also do at Bear Valley is different smaller congregations in Colorado we go preach out at. And Matt has been preaching out at this congregation on Sunday mornings. And one thing that congregation is doing, they have one man in the congregation, and he says, I just go to Walmart and buy a bag of groceries, and if I walk up and down the streets, and if there's a house that looks kind of rough, maybe the lawn wasn't mowed, or there's, it's a real rough-looking house, and they look like they are struggling, I just go up and give them a bag of groceries. And then one Sunday, a man from that ministry, just by giving him a bag of groceries, he has been coming to church. So something as simple as that, that's the kind of stuff we're planning on doing. Just the most simple things, buying a bag of groceries and giving them to a struggling, just to, again, focus on showing love, focus on spreading love, and not just leaving it there as, hey, we love you, but the reason we do this is because we love God, and God also loves you, and then you're starting this spiritual conversation. Personal Bible studies, obviously, just one-on-one Bible studies. There's going to be a lot of those taking place in coffee shops, in the church, in houses, whatever. Sitting across the table from someone and talking to them about the gospel. Also, something we're wanting to do is group Bible study nights. So, we can fill up, and I'll explain the numbers to you in a minute, but if we have, I believe the numbers we came up with is 2 Bible study, or 4 new Bible studies per month. So that's 2 per couple per month, a new Bible study. Over time, our days are going to get filled up. Over time, we're not going to have any days in the week left to have Bible studies. So we're hoping to move people to group Bible studies. And what that's going to look like is after we've been one-on-one Bible studying with these people for a couple weeks, they start coming to our house on a Thursday or a Tuesday night or something like that, and we're all going to have a group Bible study together. That way they have a meal, they have some realizing, hey, we're just regular people. They're in our houses, they're building relationships with us, and also it frees up other nights of the week to go and have more one-on-one Bible studies with new people. So, I want to read, you've got a man holding seed right here. In Matthew chapter 13, we have the parable of the sower. If you'll look in Matthew 13, what time am I ending here, Chris? 10:20? Wow. You've got the parable of the sower, Matthew 13, 1 through 9. So you've got a sower went out to sow. Some seeds fell along the path, and the birds came and devoured them. Other seeds fell on rocky ground, where it did not have soil. They sprang up, they had no depth of soil. When the sun rose, they were scorched. Since they had no root, they withered away. Other seeds fell among thorns, and they were choked out. Verse 8, other seeds fell among the good soil and produced grain. So here we have this sower, and this sower was he was not a good sower. He was reckless. Whenever you think about this picture, this guy was reckless. He was just the worst. He would have had seed coming out of his pockets and seed falling, he was just throwing stuff everywhere. When you think about it, who would go and place a real nice seed down in the thorns or on the road? It just doesn't make sense. He was going nuts with these seeds. That is our plan. He was very reckless. So our plan is to be reckless whenever we share the gospel. We want to be reckless. We want to just go nuts. There's no holding back. Everyone hears the gospel. Everyone hears it. But at the same time, we have to be systematic. We have to balance that recklessness of sharing the gospel with, we need to be systematic in the way we do this. We need to have a plan in the way we do this. So really, when it comes down to it, what we're trying to do is we're trying to find a balance between being reckless with the gospel and being systematic with sharing it. So this is kind of 4 new Bible studies per month. If 25% of those turn into conversions, based on the parable of the soils, times 12 months, times 5 years, you've got a congregation of 60 people. I believe this is a conservative number. 60 people is a pretty good size. This doesn't include, this is just 4 new Bible studies a month. This is not, we're studying with the whole family. This is not other people who are teaching other people. So this 60 is a relatively conservative number. So support, we're done, so we don't have time. But if you want more information about supporting us, you can do a one-time, you can do a monthly, you can do a congregational support like you have been doing. You can do individual support. Separate budgets means that both Katie and I, and then Matt and Heather, we're going to have our own separate budgets. We're living on our own. But just please talk to me after services, or email me, or text me, or call me, or whatever. But everything counts. If you don't have the financial ability or the desire to support us financially, then more than anything, we ask you to pray and just be prayer warriors for us, because the church needs to grow, and I think this is going to be a good work with the help of you and with your prayers. So that's all. We're out of time. Thank you for listening. That's it.
You know to go back there with us?
Yes.
Okay.